that our Holy Prophet Muhammad is the servant and the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also believe that our Holy Prophet Muhammad is the last and the final prophet, and that there is no prophet after him, either old or new. Tonight's function is to remember the great personality, to remember the person who had in fact formed our society, Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishaat al-Islam, Lahore. We remember the personality not because he formed this society, but more importantly for the work that he had done in the service of Islam. Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib had devoted all his life in the service of Islam, and he has written numerous literature, and the most significant and the most important one was and is the English translation of the Holy Qur'an. It has been, it is now 100 years since his first edition, which was in 1917, and hence this warrants a function to recognize this personality, to recognize this man who had done so much in the service of Islam. What I say, what our members of this Jamaat will say, can and will be looked upon as a prejudiced view of our founder. But what I intend to do tonight is to show you, to demonstrate to you how the world looked at him. So, in other words, how one looks at it objectively, without any prejudice, without any favor, looks upon this man, looks upon how the world saw him, and then to see what this personality has done to warrant a remembrance and a celebration tonight. Okay, I'm sorry, you probably, it looks a bit smudgy from the back, but this is the first edition in 1917. It was in England in 1917 that the first edition of Maulana Muhammad Ali's English translation and commentary was first printed and distributed in large scale. It greatly influenced subsequent English translations by prominent Muslims like Muhammad Pictor, and of course the most used, the most highly recognized Maulana Abdullah Yusuf Ali. You will find that Maulana Yusuf Ali's Quran Sharif is used today as the authority on Islam, on the translation. And let me tell you, I will come to it to show what Maulana Yusuf Ali had thought of and what praises he had in favor of Maulana Muhammad Ali. Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib's work lasted, his hard labor, for about 7 years. And in April 1916, he completed the work on the English translation and the commentary of the Holy Quran. Just to show the humbleness of this great personality, I will refer you to what he said in a Friday khutbah on the 28th of April 1916. He said, "A human being can only take on a task by Allah's help, and it is only with Allah's help that he can complete it. Today is a day of happiness for me. For years I have been busy in the work of translating the Holy Quran into English, and by the grace of Allah I have completed it today. I am not happy like a student who at the end of his examination feels that now he will have free time and can rest for a few days. He said, I'm happy because all the time that I was involved in this work, the worry was always at the back of my mind that life is so fickle and it may be that this work would be left incomplete. Of course, he said, Allah is not short of man, and it was His work, Allah's work, which would have been completed somehow. If He, that is Allah, has given strength to a weak person like me to start this work, there is no reason why He could not get it done by someone else. But it gives great pleasure to a person to complete by his own hand, in his own lifetime, the work that he had started. This really goes to show his own personality. And the important thing, as we all need to understand, Maulana Sahib emphasized that reading, writing, and the acquisition of knowledge is the first commandment of Allah. We need to understand this. We need to understand this. Whatever he did, it was all based on the Holy Qur'an. And what did the Holy Qur'an say first to our Holy Prophet Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Read in the name of thy Lord who creates. Read, and the Lord is most generous, who taught to write with by the pen, taught men what he knew not. There were tributes, like I said to you earlier on, to Maulana Sahib's translation. And Mamadou Picto, a great translator of the Holy Quran, he said, probably no man living has done longer or more valuable service for the cause of Islamic revival than Maulana Muhammad Ali of Lahore. The recitation of the Quran, Gita and Bible every morning was a part of Gandhiji's daily routine. Every day he studied Muhammad Ali's English translation of the Quran. Gandhiji used to read only the translation by Maulana Muhammad Ali, brackets MD. This gave much publicity to his translation. Other public figures close to Gandhiji also started reading that book. This was reported in July 16, 2011. And then, of course, Maulana Abdul Majid Daryabadi, if you go to the Google, just find out who he was. He said, to deny the excellence of Maulvi Muhammad Ali's translation and the influence it has exercised would be to deny the light of the sun. Now, can I just say this, that these people, all these commentaries, they did not belong to this society, our society. These were said by people outside. And Deobandi, he continued, and he said, the English translation of the Holy Quran by Maulana Muhammad Ali is not the only book he has written, but it is the one by which he will perhaps become an immortal amongst those who have written about the Holy Quran. I think it's that expression, that explanation. We talk about anyone being immortal, and for somebody outside, of course, our Jamaat, to say that, it says a lot. Maulvi Muhammad Ali, he said, has corrected the mistakes of the previous translators in scores of passages. There is no other translation or commentary of the Holy Quran in the English language to compete with Maulvi Muhammad Ali's masterpiece. That's Hafiz Ghulam Sarwar. Now, just to give you a background, Hafiz Ghulam Sarwar is the translator of the Holy Quran himself, and the translation is supplemented by very well-read notes and commentaries which deal both with the meanings of the words used in the original text and form short essays on the subjects treated in the original. He said that a mass of learning and research has been accumulated in these notes and comments which any man might be proud of. It took Maulvi Muhammad Ali 7 years to accomplish his work, but it might have taken another man 22 or 30 to do as much, and that perhaps not so thoroughly. The English of the preface and the notes is unimpeachable, and Maulvi Muhammad Ali has corrected the mistakes of the previous translators in scores of passage. And wherever he differs from them, he of course has based it with authorities and he has explained it. He went on to say, Hafiz Ghulam Sarwar Sahib, he said, if one is not hasty, one will always find that Maulvi Muhammad Ali is as great an investigator as he is a scholar. And of course, the whole book, he said, is the labor of love for which Muslims and non-Muslims alike are forever indebted. And he made a statement, which it's not on the slide, but I think it needs to be emphasized. He said, there is no other translation or commentary of the Holy Qur'an in the English language to compete with Maulvi Muhammad Ali's masterpiece. And he said, for 10 years, he said, I have always carried Maulvi Muhammad Ali's translation wherever I have been to. It traveled with me around the globe. It even went with me on a Hajj to Makkah. And of course, the tributes continue. And this gentleman, he's a congressman in the United States. There are only 2 Muslims in the Congress, and he's one of them. I've met him personally a number of times. And he said, Maulana Muhammad Ali, he's not a member of the Jamaat, incidentally, again. He's not a member of the Jamaat. He said, Maulana Muhammad Ali's translation of the Quran was one of the first works that I had a chance to read. And I'll tell you, his commentary alone should have been a book unto itself. That's how insightful his writings were to me. They were inspirational. They were liberating. They removed from me what I felt were the burdens of religion. That's a very important statement, and I want you to think about that statement. That they removed from me what I felt were the burdens of religion. You know how when you can't explain things, and it becomes a burden, and it creates doubt in your mind? And that's when he read, and that's what he said. The burdens of guilt associated with overly ritualizing the process and losing the connection with God. His translations were so relatable and digestible to me. They spoke to me in a profound way, in a different way, by presenting Islam as it truly is, as a holy, peaceful, and tolerant faith. It gave me protection from the cohesion of others. One of the main things that struck me as I thought about today, as I reviewed some of his works, was how timely and relevant they are today, how peaceful his interpretations were. Now, if we have time, I have a clip. I met him again last year in July in Ohio at a conference. Sorry, before that. Last year he couldn't come, but he sent a message. And I took a clip of that message, and if we have time, I'll play it after we finish with this. Tributes continued. The Urdu paper Wakil, incidentally, I'll come to that. We have seen the translation critically and have no hesitation in remarking that the simplicity of its language and the correctness of the version are all enviable. The writer has kept his annotations altogether free from sectarial influence, and this is so important. He was not, his beliefs were based on the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishat Islam Lahore, but his interpretations of the Quran were in no way based on supporting any of his explanations or translations. It was not influenced by that at all. And this is what, this particular one that I'm referring to, the Urdu paper Wakil, the editors, they look at things very critically. And they're, if I can say with greatest respect, they're very orthodox Muslims. Even they said that it was free from sectarian influence, with wonderful impartiality, and has gathered together the wealth of authentic Muslim theology. He has also displayed great skill and wisdom in using the new weapons of defense in refuting the objections of the opponents of Islam. And of course, Reverend Zuemas Kotli, that was the Muslim world of of July. Every month they used to come out with these articles, and it is so very worth noting that he said one cannot read far in the translation of Maulvi Muhammad Ali or on his notes without being convinced that he began his work on the Qur'an. He was already widely read in the Arabic authorities, to which frequent reference is made in his notes. Also, his quotations from Lane's lexicon indicate that he was not altogether oblivious to the results of European scholarship. Then we have Sheikh Abdul Qadir, barrister at law, and member of the Secretary of the State for India's Council. And again, not a member of our society, not a member of our Jamaat. He said, the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishatul Islam has for a long time been performing invaluable services for the propagation of Islam. Its leader and president is Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib, who by publishing his English translation and commentary of the Holy Quran has placed the English-knowing world under a deep debt of gratitude. He is a venerable gentleman who has true love for Islam and the people of Islam, without distinction of party or creed. View with great respect his unselfish services to Islam and appreciate them. This Jamaat, which is Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishatul Islam, has presented in foreign countries such a picture of Islam that Muslims of all sects recognize it. Tributes then continue. This commentary of Maulana Muhammad Ali in 1917, 17 years before the commentary of Alma Abdullah Yusuf Ali. This is why the Alma, that is Maulana Sahib, Maulana Yusuf Ali, in the preface of his commentary, besides mentioning other English commentaries, has also appreciated this commentary and written as follows. He said, its Lahore Anjuman has published Maulvi Muhammad Ali's translation, first edition in 1917, which has passed through more than one edition. It is a scholarly work and is equipped with adequate explanatory matter in the notes and the preface and a fairly full index. And this was reported in the Urdu Monthly Islamic Digest of Karachi, Pakistan in March 1996. Now one would start thinking as to what were the reasons that would deserve such comments. First of all, and most importantly, for contemporary times, in today's times, he corrected the concept of war and the meaning of jihad, and he reminded. He said, permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made. And I just emphasized the word permission, and that was his emphasis in his translation. Permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they have been wronged, and God is able to help them. Those who have been expelled from their homes, unjustly, only for saying Allah is our Lord. And if God had not allowed one group of people to repel another, then there would have been pulled down cloisters and synagogues and churches and mosques. I need to also at this stage, whilst I haven't put this all on the slides itself, there is another English author. He said, I have received the copy of the Holy Quran, Maulana Muhammad Ali's, and hasten to congratulate you on the appearance. Your scripture is such a truly beautiful and chaste form. It is a pure delight to handle such a book, but when one turns to its treasures of light and learning, one is filled with thankfulness and gratitude for all the labor. I rejoice to see the Holy Quran in my own language and explained by a deeply learned and pious Muslim. And I believe that the work will be found to mark in the new epoch in the religious life of the world. The Madras Mail in 1929, 15th October, had this to say: Maulvi Muhammad Ali's name is a guarantee that the translation is as accurate as it could be. Few translations into English have reached such a high standard. The Hindu, Madras, 15 October 1929. As a translator, he always had the reputation of being accurate and reliable. The wealth of material put into the introduction and explanatory footnotes is impressive. Then, of course, it continues in the United India and Indian States, in Delhi. Among human productions of literary masterpieces, the English translation of the Holy Book by Maulvi Muhammad Ali undoubtedly claims a position of distinction and preeminence. The Advocate, Lucknow, on 24th of October 1935. Maulana Muhammad Ali is a well-known personality, a great scholar, and as a translator, he has the good reputation of being accurate and reliable, and his translation in English is of high standard. We congratulate Maulana Muhammad Ali for his production, which has surpassed other English translations. And no doubt, we have the Hindustan Times, Delhi, 6th of May 1935. Maulana Muhammad Ali's name is known to every lover of the holy literature of Islam. Very illuminating notes are provided by the translator, which will be of great use to students. Maulana Muhammad Ali's language is restrained and eminently suitable for the purpose. And for the reasons we continue, he explained that only permission has been given to fight. He quoted these verses of the Holy Qur'an and referred to, and he said, fight in the way of God against those who fight against you, but be not aggressive. He highlights this. Be not aggressive. Surely God, Allah loves not the aggressors. And if they incline to peace, he reminds, incline thou also to it and trust in God. Surely he is the hearer, the knower, and if they intend to deceive thee, then surely God is sufficient for thee. These verses precludes any form of aggression. He reminds, Maulana Muhammad Ali reminds, he says only permission is granted. And of course, he explained the true significance of the word jihad. Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib clears all these misconceptions by showing that the meaning of jihad in the Arabic lexicons is a struggle against any object of disapprobation to rectify a situation. He showed that the word jihad appears frequently in the Meccan verses, a period of 13 years which comprises the major part of the prophethood of Muhammad, when there was no fighting at all. Now, the importance of the fact that this word appears in the Meccan, as you know, it took 23 years for the the whole Quran to be revealed. 13 years in Makkah, 10 years in Medina. And this word jihad appeared in the Meccan period, revelations, but there was no war. There was no war during the Meccan revelations, which goes to show that the word jihad, even though it existed then, could not have meant war, because there was no war whilst he was in Makkah. And of course, he very rightly, Maulana Sahib said, this misunderstanding is well illustrated in the older edition of the prestigious Encyclopedia of Islam, where the entry for jihad, it says, sea war. So you can see where all these misunderstandings. And the other very interesting point that needs to be reminded is this, that whatever on the doctrine of abrogation, as you know, we all understand what abrogation is, that one verse has been either deleted or replaced or withdrawn and replaced by something else. He referred to this Holy Quran and he says, whatever message we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or one like it. Knowest thou not that Allah is possessor of power over all things? And of course, and when we change a message for a message, and Allah knows best what He reveals, they say, thou art only a forger, nay, most of them know not. In other words, they called him a forger because he says what was revealed before is no longer valid, and I'm replacing what was revealed before with what is in the Holy Quran. So it's not talking about the abrogation of any verse of the Holy Quran. It's talking about the abrogation of the previous revelations. Does that make sense? It is talking about the abrogation of the previous verses, previous scriptures. There is no verse of the Holy Quran which is abrogated. For the simple reason that if one has to look at the ayat of the Holy Quran which talks about that there is no inconsistency in the Holy Quran, then of course if any of the verses were abrogated and are still in the Holy Quran, that means that verse exists as inconsistent with another verse of the Quran. And that can't be right, because Allah says there is no inconsistency in the Holy Quran. And the interpretation which is very, very common, it's not uncommon, it's very common, that the Muslims believe that there are verses of the Holy Quran which has been abrogated. The Muslims believe that. And the interpretation which these commentators base and make that blanket statement is because they cannot explain the subsequent verses of the Holy Quran which seems on the face of it not consistent. So if they can't explain that, what they simply do is they simply come up with the smart idea of saying that the verse of the Holy Quran has been abrogated. And like Allah said, which I've already mentioned to you, Allah says in the Holy Quran, will they not then meditate on the Quran? And if it were from any other than Allah, they would have found in it many a discrepancy. Now, if any verse, and I think this is a logical, according to me, logical argument to put forward, if any verse of the Holy Quran was abrogated, before our Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam died, he had the Holy Quran read back to him twice. Wouldn't that have been the time when he would have said, take out this verse because it's no longer valid, or it has been abrogated? He wouldn't. It's a simple thing. For example, if you have a law today, pass a law, if another law, if that law is repealed, the subsequent law will not have the old law. The new law will have an updated law. It sounds contrary to common sense to have a out-of-date law in any present legislation to say this, even to say this was the law. You don't. This is the time when we come to the death of Maulana Sahib. That was on the 13th of October 1951. And then after his death, these tributes then started flowing. Maulvi Muhammad Ali, whose death occurred in Karachi, probably did more writing on Islamic subjects for almost half a century than any contemporary individual. Immersed in scholarly pursuits and gifted with a researcher's frame of mind, his aims were not academic. He was a missionary who awoke to his calling in life in the environment of the last century, when Islam in this subcontinent was the target of concentrated, scurrilous attacks from Western missionaries. This was reported in the Dawn, a newspaper in Karachi, on the 16th of October, 1951. And it continued, a man of his academic distinction in the late 90s must have overcome a strong temptation in declining to enter government service. Just to give you a background, he did his MA in English, he was in maths, then he became a lawyer. But instead of pursuing his legal career, like any lawyer would, what he did was he decided to do work in the service of Islam. And of course, at that time, in those days, to join the public service was the biggest achievement in Pakistan, not Pakistan, in India at that time. And that's the relevance of this, that the inevitable goal of education in those days and choosing a missionary career. The object to which he dedicated his life was the translation of the Holy Qur'an into English. And he lived long enough after the first edition of his translation and commentary, which appeared in 1917, to follow it up with many other works. The best among these subsequent works are believed to be his Muhammad, the Prophet, and the Religion of Islam. The former is a biography which preeminently serves its purpose, and the latter is almost encyclopedic in its range of information, again reported in the newspaper. As a missionary, Maulvi Muhammad Ali had profitably studied the publicity techniques of European missionaries, and his prolific writings reflect his ability to devise a suitable approach to almost every individual section of its readers. Stupendous was the energy that he could not put into this task, and as the years grew on him, the willpower made up for what was lacking in physical strength. He died working almost till the last, silent and unassuming as he was. Both the man and his works were appropriately reflected in the fact, paradoxical as it might seem, that his writings were better known than the man himself. Tributes continued. On October 13 at 11:30 a.m. in Karachi, there passed away from this world a well-known scholar and religious leader, Maulana Muhammad Ali, head of the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishatul Islam Lahore. Soon after finishing his education and while still very young, Maulana Muhammad Ali joined the followers of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian and came to the fore as a writer in English on Islam while he edited the Review of Religions, a monthly organ of the Ahmadiyya movement, of which the first issue came out in January of 1902. The monthly journal, devoted to the comparative study of religion, did yeoman service under Maulana Muhammad Ali's editorship by defending Islam against the onslaught of Christian missionaries and European Orientalists of the old school, whose writings were more marked by a virulent prejudice against Islam than by the spirit of an honest inquiry and scholarly research. That was in the Star, Lahore, 20th October 1951. You probably can't read in the back, but the last line reads, this is by a Turkish gentleman, a scholar. He said, a heavy loss for the Muslim world. Again, he's not a member of our society, it's nothing to do with the society. He said, a heavy loss for the Muslim world, Maulana Muhammad Ali and his work by Umar Riza Dugral, and he captioned his article, The Debt I Owe to Muhammad Ali. He said that it so happened, he said that after taking part in the World Muslim Conference in Karachi in February 1951, he said he and his team spent several days in Lahore. and their first duty was to pay a visit to Maulana Muhammad Ali, because they had by that time read his translation of the Holy Qur'an. He said, "We had read his writings in Turkey for 30 years with great benefit to ourselves. He enlightened us on many matters, for he had penetrated deeply into the spirit of Islam and understood its aims and objectives, and set out to explain them to others. He wrote with equal facility in English and his native tongue. Through his writings in English, we were able to understand what he had to say." And of course, he said that it has been calculated that he wrote altogether 7,000 pages in English and 10,000 in Urdu, and he can say that I truthfully say that I have read in full the 7,000 pages written in English. And he, of course, said that that was quite significant for him. He, of course, continued and said, "With the death of Muhammad Ali, we have lost a man who devoted his whole life to the service of Islam, a savant and a thinker. He was a hard worker and a prolific writer. I was profoundly moved on learning this sad news through reading the Islamic Review for November 1951. He was certainly the greatest Muslim thinker and writer of our time, and was possessed of a sound and fertile brain, a pure heart full of enthusiasm, a faith which was profound and unshakable, and a knowledge that was limitless. During his lifetime, he devoted all his capabilities and talents to one object, the revival of Islam, the brushing aside of useless superstition among Muslims, and re-establishing the original doctrine of Islam in its pristine beauty. And he rejuvenated its lost force. This good worker in a saintly cause, whose days of work are over, was called Muhammad Ali of Lahore, famous translator and commentator of the Qur'an into English. He was an eminent personality who left his mark on the world by this supreme work and a host of other books on Islam." He received a very deserving invitation, and this is important. In August 1951, that's about 2-3 months before he died, Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib received an invitation channeled through the government of Pakistan from the famous Orientalist Professor Kramer of Holland. The professor had formed a board of writers for the Encyclopedia of Islam, and had himself proposed the name of Maulana Muhammad Ali to join this group of writers. He expressed the hope that the Maulana, despite his poor health, could join this board in view of the great importance of this work, particularly for Muslims all over the world, and generally for everyone else as well. In reply, sadly, Maulana Muhammad Ali expressed his happy willingness to accept this responsibility, but God had willed otherwise. He died on the 13th of October 1951. In finishing, I think it is important to remind each and every one of us of his advice, which applies to anyone, irrespective of the society you belong to, irrespective of to the Jamaat you belong to. He emphasized that for the running of any organization of the community, workers must respect, trust, and think well of one another. He highlighted how sometimes a suspicion and doubt can keep on building up in a person's heart until it reaches a dangerous level. I want you to think about this. In thinking well of a fellow worker, when a person does something which can be represented both in a good and in an adverse light, you must refrain from looking at the same in a negative way. We men Nothing purposely has been interrupted so that we can think about what I've just been reading. What was I reading? We men, being human beings, and are created weak, and that we will always make mistakes. Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib, in December of 1913, requested all his members to avoid mischievous activities that lead to disunity. You must always have favorable opinions about your brothers and members in the Jamaat. That applies to any society. We should not be bad-mouthing each other. Idle talks and gossip can be completely distorted by the time it is spread to another person. Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib reminded his members that once you leave the gift of unity, you will not acquire it again even by spending all that you can, and all of your works will remain incomplete and unfulfilled. Instead of malice and spite, create love and compassion for your brethren in your hearts. And if you cannot go that far, at least remove the malice and spite from within you. If someone is working for your movement or serving religion, and you also notice some flaw in him, think of his service and his work in contrast with his flaw. Instead of trying to expel your brothers from within you, try to bring others to join you. If you expend all your energies in rejecting your brothers, then you will not have any strength left to do the opposite work. I conclude with this dua, which I've done this in the past before, but I think it's important, and that's why I brought this on the screen. And I want you to sincerely say this and accept it and pray for this soul. Ya Allah, shower your abundant blessings on the soul of this virtuous, sincere man, as he did good to us and indeed to the whole of humanity. May you reward him in even greater measure, but most of all, kindle in our hearts a spark of the passion, and I have to repeat this, just a spark of the passion that burned in his heart for the propagation of Islam and the Holy Qur'an, and enable us to follow his footsteps. May you safeguard and help the Jamaat founded by Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib, which he put to the service of Islam and the Qur'an so well and successfully. Let the work of the propagation of Islam and the Holy Qur'an, which Maulana Muhammad Ali carried out with such toil and labor, thrive and succeed, so that Islam may spread in the world and humanity take refuge in the fold of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ya Allah, this world will perish without your Islam and your Quran. Come to its rescue.